Hey everyone, Wolf Lord Rho here. Before I begin today, a huge thank you to Charlie for the virtual gift voucher. Huge thank you my friend for the support, it is truly appreciated, thank you. But on to today. Today we are discussing Magnus the Red, reuniting with Malcador the Sigillite upon the throne world of terror. Oh man, this one is going to be good. Spoiler warning to begin, the events we are discussing today are from the Horus Heresy novel Fury of Magnus by Graham McNeill. As always, I really recommend you read the story for yourself first, as that's the best way to enjoy the lore for yourself. Not only that, we help to support the great Games Workshop and Black Library, because without them we don't have this amazing lore to talk about. I will put a link in the description as always. But with that said, let's just jump straight in. Okay, the Fury of Magnus, the culmination to the Magnus the Red storyline. Guys, if there's one book you read without spoiling it for yourself, let it be this. If you haven't read it, stop listening now and just wait until you have, because it's a story that deserves not to be spoiled. In my opinion, it is the best book in the Siege of Terror series thus far, and honestly to me it's not even close. And that's really saying something when I've been given goosebumps by the charge of the White Scars, of the stand of Jagatai Khan, and Sanguinius flying to his brother's aid. But this book is simply that good. So the main premise of the novel is Magnus attempting to gain access to the Imperial Palace during the Siege of Terror. His desire is to reclaim the last shard of himself he still believes lies beneath the Imperial Palace within his father's dungeon. And Magnus is really fixated on this because he believes it to be the shard that represents the best of him, the piece of him that contains everything good, and he needs that back more than anything. The sad truth, however, is that the shard has already been destroyed when it was used by Malcador in the ritual to create Janus. This quest of Magnus's is a fool's errand. Now, Magnus, having witnessed a glimpse of his father's presence, has found a crack in his psychic shield protecting the palace. And after calling in a favour with his one true remaining friend, the Lord of Iron Perturabo, Magnus and his sons engage in the battle on the front lines. And after some clever psychic ploys feigning their retreat, Magnus, along with 4 of his sons, manage to infiltrate beyond the palace's defences, psychically disguising themselves as blood angels, harmlessly but nervously walking amongst the defenders within. And after some tense traversing of the palace, Magnus and his sons eventually ascend to the Great Observatory. And despite himself, Magnus can't help but feel nostalgic with memories flooding back to him. His time upon Terra with his father and brothers. However, he casts them aside as a side effect of being close to the final shard he seeks, a shard we know no longer exists. This is the truth of Magnus's heart, one that he has tried to bury. His purpose here within the observatory is to find the secret entrance to the Hall of Leng, to use those ancient pathways to access the deepest recesses of the palace. Peeling open the hidden entrance, the Thousand Sons' attention is turned to an almighty explosion as an enemy cluster bomb detonates above the observatory. And here once more we glimpse the true Magnus, the Primarch he has always been, as rather than escape the destruction by slipping away into the hidden passage, he refuses to let the gathered civilian refugees die. Striding back into the hall, he throws up his arms to the sky, using his power to shield the civilians beneath, the explosion straining against his might. The sons of Magnus join their Primarch, throwing their weight behind his, casting aside the disguises they bore, standing once more as the proud thousand sons they are. And with that, the shield throttles the life from the raging explosion. Once the danger is past and the thousand sons have escaped into the hidden passageway, Ahriman asks Magnus why he saved the civilians, and Magnus's answer: he doesn't know. For all the flaws in Magnus, for all the mistakes he made, this instinctive action shows beyond a shadow of a doubt his heart never truly left the Imperium. Passing through the passages, Magnus and his sons ultimately emerge into an immense underground cavern, filled by a lake large enough to easily be an underground sea. 20 villas line its shore, each of them scaled for that of a Primarch. And by the shore 2 figures await. One, a perpetual female Magnus doesn't know. The other, "Welcome home, Magnus," said Malcador the Sigillite. Now this meeting was just oh so good. One of those moments the history of the lore has never told us. You get that unmatchable excitement of treading new ground. That the words you are reading are a truly momentous occasion. Magnus and Malcador coming face to face. Something I know I'd longed for years, as I'm sure no doubt many of you did too. And now finally here, that time had come. Now of course I would be remiss if I didn't mention those 20 Primarch villas. 20 villas for 20 sons. These were the villas created for the Primarchs to grow up in, safe below the Imperial Palace, from the prying eyes and reach of the gods of chaos. And this ends once and for all, if there was any doubt left with the Urda revelation, that the Emperor did not intend the Primarchs scattering. They were to be raised upon Terra, together. And how different things could have been. What a what-if story that would be. All 20 of the Primarchs being raised here together. How different their friendships, how different their relationships, and how different the future of the Imperium could have been. With a simple uttering of the word home, Magnus's mind is thrown into wandering thoughts of memories of Prospero, realizing now in this moment that it was a refuge to hide in and nothing more, and that Terra, the throne world, is the true home of him and all his brothers. He's let Malcador one-up him with but a single word. He and Malcador have sailed the stars and shared their minds. He knows better than most the mind games the old man can play. He chides himself mentally for once again falling into that trap. Ordering his sons not to open fire, Magnus approaches the table and chairs where Malcador awaits, glancing at the regicide board he has been playing whilst he's waited, and they begin their conversation in relation to the state of the game, the obvious veiled references to the current situation with the game nearly over and the king being surrounded, However, Magnus refuses to play Malcador. They know each other too well. So instead, Malcador suggests Olivia, and Magnus agrees to this one final game. But enough of the symbolism. Malcador knows why he has come, and Olivia suggests it's vengeance for Prospero. Would I be unjustified in such a motive? Asked Magnus. I did nothing wrong, and my world was razed. My sons butchered by Russ's dogs, and a wealth of learning burned to ash. That was not my intent, said Malcador, and his sadness was genuine, nor was it his. Your intent is meaningless, snapped Magnus. You are still responsible. You sent Russ and the custodians to my world, with blades bared. What did you think they would do? Perhaps you could ask Horus, said Malcador. His hands are as stained red with the blood of your sons, as much as mine. I say that not to pass any responsibility. I own that decision, and the doom of Prospero is entirely my burden to shoulder. I sent the wolves. I gave them their orders, but I did not foresee how their mission might be co-opted by a single word. And that's an interesting passage there. Firstly, the question of would Magnus be wrong in seeking his vengeance? It's an interesting question to ponder, and I think Magnus then answers it for himself in telling Malcador his intent is meaningless. He is still responsible. The exact same thing could be said to him, where he began by saying he did nothing wrong. Why is that? Because of his intent. His intent was to warn his father, but the fact is, he destroyed his webway project. If intent is meaningless, Magnus did everything wrong. Malcador again, however, accepts the blame for Prospero entirely, admitting that it was his and the Emperor's fault. They should have been clearer to Magnus on the cost of crossing the line. And I'm not sure that would have made a difference. Magnus's nature was too consumed with the lust for knowledge and power. I don't think anything the Emperor could have said would have stopped him. The Council of Nicaea was clear. Anyone who crosses me shall be my enemy. And yet Magnus still did. Their conversation continues with Malcador saying it is not yet set for them to be enemies, and that it can still be salvaged. And notedly, Magnus does not disagree, turning the conversation instead to the reason he is truly here, his last soul shard, the best part of himself. Yet here Malcador disagrees, informing Magnus that he was no better or worse than any other aspect of himself. The goodness within him was always there, and it always has been. Which again, as the reader, we know is true, having already seen Magnus save the civilians above. And you get the sense here that Magnus has pinned everything on this lost shard, that he views it as almost a get-out-of-jail-free card for his mind, that he can wipe away everything that has transpired since Prospero, because he didn't have this good part of himself. It's like he's latched on to this figurative life vest to desperately keep himself afloat, to not be drowned and consumed by the dark powers surrounding him. Quite simply, for all Magnus's bluster, when he looks in that figurative mirror, he despises what he's becoming. That is why he so desperately clings to this shard, being the best of himself, refusing to accept anything else. And indeed, he more or less confirms this in attempting to deny Malcador's claims. It was shorn from me before Horus poisoned the well. It was the best part of me, uncorrupted by all of this. But as Malcador tells him he's wrong, and in any event, too late, Magnus's anger explodes, throwing the table aside and seizing Malcador by the throat, lifting the old man off the ground. He demands to know what he has done, and as Malcador gasps out what needed to be done to save the last son of Prospero, Magnus unleashes all his hurt and anger in a scream of anguish. This moment of redemption, being torn away from him at the last, is too much for him to bear. It had all come to this, and Magnus let out all the fire burning within him. After what felt like a lifetime, Magnus dropped to his knees, seeing the corpse of Olivia nearby, slain by a bolt round in the commotion. The thousand son responsible sees his life ending at but a thought from Magnus. And then, there it is. Still clutched in his iron grip was the Sigillite. But never again would he play regicide. Never again would he stand in the presence of demigods and speak to them as equals. Malcador's corpse was a char-black skeleton of heat-fused bones and roasted meat. Oh man, guys, I cannot describe to you the shock I had in this moment. Malcador the Sigillite was dead. We talk about goosebump moments in the lore. Well, my lord, this is it. In his blind fury and rage, Magnus had slain Malcador. Speechless, just speechless. These are the moments that make the Heresy series the best bar none. I mean, what can compare to this? I thought we were headed to major retcon territory here. And look, I've made no secret of my fondness for Malcador. He is easily one of my favourite characters in all of the lore. I'm actually hoping to get some artwork done of him, because there's just not enough out there of this fascinating character. But I have to say, once the shock was setting in, I began to get a little PO'd that this was his end. That the whole Malcador the hero sacrifice was nothing but PR. That the character of Malcador deserved more than this, as shocking as it was. But this was just the latest masterclass from the writer Graham McNeill, because this was not Malcador's end. In crafting this magical scene, he reeled me in hook, line and sinker. Honestly, my mind was racing. I knew it was impossible, yet somehow, some way, Malcador the Sigillite was dead. Was Magnus now going to ascend the throne? How is this even possible? I knew it shouldn't be, yet here we were. My mind was all over the place. How was this story going to work out? Honestly, I can't say it enough. Graham McNeill crafted an amazing read. It's really the moments like these why I say read the stories for yourself first. You just can't recapture the magic of these moments. Absolutely magical, it really was. Much later, Olivia awakens from her death, not for the first time in her perpetual existence. Except for now, She knows what she must do. Having spoken with him, the Emperor of mankind, sitting next to the remains of Malcador, she gives her life for his, and in her final moments looks up to see his crying tears. Malcador the Sigillite lives once more. As for Magnus, however, glancing down to the skull of Malcador, he recoiled in shock, not intending any of this, and you can just feel his spirit sinking deeper into the hole, that he intended none of this to happen. Yet no matter what he tries, the situation just keeps getting worse. That the Primarch he was meant to be is truly broken, and now there is no turning back. So he makes the only decision he can, now feeling he's lost beyond any redemption. He's going to kill his father, the Emperor of mankind. Oh man, for all the moments that Magnus the Red has been through, for all the moments of tragedy, unbelievably this is the moment that his spirit is truly broken. Despite everything else, there was always a glimmer of hope, something that he was holding onto, despite the odds mounting against him. Yet having that lifeline torn away, that shard that he was holding onto, and slaying Malcador in his anguish, he knows now there is no turning back, and so he must go to do the only thing that is left, and that is stand before his father one final time. Man, these are the moments in the lore I just live for. As always guys, what do you think? Why do you feel Magnus held on to that final shard so tightly? Why do you think he just couldn't accept that maybe the goodness was still within him? Why did it need to be this shard? And how much do you think, in looking down and seeing the skull of Malcador, the skeleton of a man who meant so much to him in his life past, just how much did this break what was left of the Primarch? And in coming to this point, in taking this gamble, the question has to be asked, did Malcador know he was going to his death? Why else did he bring Olivia with him? Was it just to play the game of regicide, or was it, in truth, knowing she would make the ultimate sacrifice and give her life for his? As always guys, leave your thoughts in the comments below, I love to read them. Huge thank you to all my subscribers, your support truly means a lot to me, it really does. And if you're new, please consider subscribing to help the channel grow. If you enjoyed this particular vid, then why not drop a like on it too. But with that said, I am off, and I'll see you all again tomorrow, as we talk Magnus and the Emperor.